Hello, and welcome once again to Know Before You Go for the 17th Sunday of Ordinary Time. I am Father Jim Marchionda, Provincial of the Chicago Dominicans, and I am happy to be with you. I thought I'd begin today by wearing my mask, because the first reading is from the Book of Wisdom. I find myself surrounded with wisdom every time I leave the house. So many people wearing their masks. So many people looking out for the good of others. So many people doing their part to contribute to the healing of our nation from this terrible pandemic. And because the first reading leads us in that direction, I want to support it as well in my preaching today. Today, for the 17th Sunday of Ordinary Time, we have readings from the first book of Kings, from St. Paul's letter to the Romans, and from the Gospel of St. Matthew. The Gospel of St. Matthew continues in the theme of sowing seeds and saying what the kingdom of heaven might be like. There are three different stories in the Gospel reading. The third one is the one about the kingdom of heaven is like fishermen who pull up a whole big net of fish and they just separate the good from the bad. And in the end, that's what's going to happen with the kingdom of heaven. The good will be separated from the bad. But the first two parts of the gospel today are about finding a treasure, about finding this buried treasure in a field and the person going out and selling all of his property so he can buy that field. The treasure is so significant, so wonderful. The second story is like it. It's about finding a pearl of great value and how one gets rid of everything and sells all he can, all she can, in order to buy the pearl of great value. The kingdom of heaven is getting an understanding or an inkling or a leaning towards something wonderful and then doing whatever we can to embrace that wonderfulness, that goodness. The goodness that I perceive today really comes to us from the first reading, from the first book of Kings. It's a story about Solomon, and it's a story you know very well. God is speaking to Solomon in his prayer, however, in a dream, and God says to Solomon, "Ask me anything that you wish, and I will grant it to you." And Solomon proceeds to tell God in his prayer, "Lord, I am suddenly finding myself leader of this massive people. And what I ask you for is an understanding heart, that I might know right from wrong, and that I might lead as you would have me lead." You know that story, isn't it beautiful? And God says to Solomon, God is so impressed with Solomon that he didn't ask for wealth. He didn't ask for riches. He didn't ask for good health. He didn't ask for a long life. It wasn't about him. He asked for what was necessary to live with other human beings and choose the right over the wrong. And God said, because you were so unselfish in what you requested, I will grant your request, and you will receive all the wisdom you need. And you know that Solomon was known for that wisdom. My friends, that reading strikes me as the great pearl from the gospel, as the hidden treasure or the buried treasure. The treasure is not what so many times we're inclined to go for, not about things that satisfy us. The treasure is the wisdom of God in how we interact with one another. I find myself thinking about that wisdom of God because of all the complexities of today's world. I find myself wanting to find wisdom in the middle of the pandemic, in the middle of all the social unrest in our country. Where is the wisdom? Where is leadership toward wisdom? And how can I participate in it? How can I participate in a leadership that tends toward wisdom and knowing right from wrong. I have to tell you, as I was preparing to preach for this Sunday, all of a sudden, because of the reading, I started thinking of South Africa. I started thinking of the whole history of apartheid. And I started thinking of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission in South Africa that was established in 1995 under the new government, and how it identified, it uncovered human rights violations of the past and set out in dialogue to try to correct the past and set the entire nation on a new path, in a new direction. I have tremendous respect for Nelson Mandela. I have tremendous respect that they actually achieved that. And because of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, we're able to establish a democracy after all those years of suffering and division. Of course, it had its problems. As I studied it a little bit, I saw it had its setbacks, it had its problems, it made its mistakes. It was not always as truthful as it should have been. Nevertheless, the goal was there, the aim was there. They embraced the desire to name what had been wrong and to dialogue in hopes of healing, in hopes of correcting it, in hopes of never returning to the inequality of life that they had experienced for so much of their history. I believe that the 17th Sunday of Ordinary Time is perfect for us, isn't it? In this day and age, and what we're suffering in the United States, in all the social unrest that we're going through. My friends, we need a leadership toward wisdom. We need to ask for the very same thing that Solomon sought. We need to be among those who pray to God, not for my own good, not for what I want, not for my comfort, not for my opinion, not for what I think has to be, but for a deeper wisdom to know right from wrong. And like Solomon, to be able to make our contribution to the well-being of us all, to the common good. As St. Paul said to the Romans, all things work for good for those who love God. You and I love God. You love God as much as I do. In that love for God, may you and I today pray for wisdom for us, for our political leaders, for our church leaders. And may it be wisdom that guides this nation, and wisdom that guides this church, and wisdom alone that guides our own thoughts and our actions every day going forward. God bless you and your families.